Good evening. My name is Diane Howard, Mayor of Redwood City, and I'd like to call our meeting to order. Thank you for tuning in to our virtual City Council meeting of October the 11th, 2021. Attending the meeting tonight via teleconference are Council Members Aguirre, Espinoza Garnica, G, Reddy, and Smith, Vice Mayor Hale, and myself.
Before we get started, I want to note we're holding our meeting pursuant to Assembly Bill 361 regarding teleconference meetings under the Brown Act. In compliance with AB 361, there will be no total time limit for public comment. We will take public comment from those who wish to speak, either by raising their hand on Zoom or calling the dial-in phone number provided, and each comment will still be limited to 2 minutes each unless otherwise determined. Items will be taken in the order they are listed on the agenda. I'd now like to ask our city clerk to call the roll.
Thank you and good evening. Council Member Aguirre. Council Member Espinoza Garnica.
Here.
Council Member G.
Here.
Council Member Reddy.
Here.
Council Member Smith.
Here.
Vice Mayor Hale.
Here.
And Mayor Howard.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I now have the honor of leading you in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now moving on to item number 4, presentations and acknowledgements. Tonight, we have a proclamation recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day. October 11th marks a significant day for the Indigenous people in our community and across California. Tonight, we are honored to issue a proclamation recognizing Indigenous Peoples Day, which celebrates America's first inhabitants and the tribal nations that continue to thrive today. With us this evening to accept the proclamation is Dr. Jonathan Cordero, Executive Director of the Association of the Ramaytush Ohlone Tribe, whose ancestral lands, Redwood City sits on today. I will now read excerpts of the proclamation. Whereas since the arrival of the Spanish in 1769, California Indians have endured a long and well-documented history of oppression, violence, displacement, enslavement, forced assimilation, religious conversion, and discrimination. And whereas Redwood City sits on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone people, and whereas the city of Redwood City values the progress our society has accomplished through Indigenous peoples' knowledge, technology, thought, science, philosophy, and artistic contributions, and also recognizes the deep historic, cultural, and contemporary significance of the Indigenous people of the lands. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Diane Howard, Mayor of Redwood City, on behalf of our City Council and the people of Redwood City, do hereby proclaim October the 11th, 2021 as Indigenous Peoples Day and implore the community to reflect upon the resistance and resilience of Indigenous peoples in the face of ongoing struggle and injustice, and to celebrate the lasting culture and value that the Ramaytush, Ohlone, and other Indigenous nations add to our city. We further encourage other businesses, organizations, and public entities to also recognize Indigenous Peoples Day in support of our Indigenous neighbors and friends. I now would like to welcome Dr. Jonathan Cordero to give his remarks. Dr. Cordero?
Thank you, Mayor, and Vice Mayor and Council members for the opportunity to speak tonight. As you can imagine, it's been a very busy day today for me, and so I'm going to keep my remarks relatively short. I want to first start by thanking Brianna Evans, who has been really instrumental and actually quite amazing in helping me go through this process and obviously helping Redwood City get to the point where we have this wonderful proclamation. And it's also quite remarkable that there's such a strong statement in the final paragraph, Mayor. So hats off to you for including such a strong and powerful final paragraph in this proclamation. The Association Ramaytush Ohlone is starting up as a full-time nonprofit at the beginning of this year. So I will actually be moving up to San Mateo County and living and working full-time as executive director. So I look forward to continuing to work with Redwood City to improve the health of our Earth Mother and to improve the well-being of all peoples in our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cordero, for being with us, and welcome to San Mateo County. We look forward to seeing you here more frequently. And thank you for being with us this evening. Item number 4B, the month of October also brings awareness to the importance of environmental health and sustainability for our youth, who are the future of our communities. Local resident and registered nurse Marilyn Budenbaum, and member of the Alliance of Nurses for Healthy Environments, has joined us this evening to accept this proclamation recognizing Children's Environmental Health Month. I'll read a few excerpts of the proclamation. Whereas the aim of Children's Environmental Health Month is to raise awareness about the importance of clean air, clean water, safe food, and consumer products, healthy environments, and stable climates to children's health and development. And whereas the Alliance of Nurses for Health Environments is a national network of nurses, many of whom live and work in Redwood City, which focuses on education, research, and policy advocacy related to climate change, hazardous chemicals, food sustainability, and health and wellness to protect the young people in our community. Whereas together we can safeguard the health and safety and well-being of our most precious resource, our children. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Diane Howard, Mayor of Redwood City, on behalf of our City Council and the people of Redwood City, do hereby proclaim October 2021 as Children's Environmental Health Month and urge all citizens to observe this month with awareness raising and environmental health and stewardship activities to create a healthier environment for our children. I would now like to welcome Ms. Rudenbaum to give her remarks. Ms. Rudenbaum?
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak and come to the meeting. And I want, on behalf of myself and all the nurses at the Alliance of Nurses for a Healthy Environment in California, I wish to send a sincere thank you to Mayor Diane Howard, Vice Mayor Giselle Hale, and all the other members of the City Council for this proclamation. It is a big step to increase awareness of the importance of providing a healthy environment for our children. You've done an excellent job of explaining what the Alliance of Nurses for a Healthy Environment is. And I just encourage everybody to, if they can, get a chance to look at our website. It's envirn.org. And you can find tools for information on home environment, health and safety assessment, and information about purchasing personal care products based on relative chemical toxicity. And that website is ewg.org. And then the pesticide on food website is whatsonmyfood.org, and all these are available on our website. I appreciate all the time anybody has to look at the website. And did you know California has some of the worst air pollution in the country? Over 400,000 California's children, and mostly disproportionate African American California residents are hospitalized with asthma every year. Our California State Senator for District 13, Josh Becker, has requested applicants for a youth climate action boot camp. And the applicants need to reside in State District 13, which is Redwood City is part of, and be 14 to 21. And it's a hands-on program to examine climate justice and equity. And if you're interested, you may contact his colleague, Lindsay, and it's spelled Lindsay dot Aaron Priest, EHRENPREIS at sen.ca.gov. And I thank you again, Mayor Howard and the City Council, for proclaiming in Redwood City the California Children's Environmental Health Month. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome, Ms. Budenbaum. As a nurse, I'd just like to thank you and your colleagues for the wonderful work that you're doing for our children. Thank you for being here with us this evening.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Moving on to item 4C, our last presentation of the evening will be from All Home California, who will be presenting their regional action plan. I'd now like to turn it over to Irving Torres, All Home's Director of Community Engagement, to give the presentation. Mr. Torres?
Yes, hi, good evening, Mayor Diane Howard, Vice Mayor Giselle Hell, and members of the Redwood City Council. It's great to be here. Once again, Irving Torres with All Home. So I have just a quick presentation that I wanted to share with you all. Just our organization and the work that we're doing across the Bay Area. So next slide. So just an overview of our work. So we launched in December of 2019 with three objectives. One is to really advance regional solutions that disrupt the cycles of poverty and homelessness throughout the Bay Area. Two, redress the disparities in outcome as a result of race. And then three, create more economic mobilities for our extremely low-income individuals and families within the Bay Area. Quick statistics I want to share with you all. In 2019, more than 800,000 residents in the Bay Area are in that category of extremely low income. So our work is really towards really providing support and economic mobility for our ELI community. And we do that by working across the regions and sectors and silos to advance coordinated, innovative, and service deliveries to build momentum to really challenge the longstanding systems that perpetuate homelessness here in the Bay Area. Next slide. So All Home works on three strategic focus areas: extremely low income, housing production and preservation, providing capacity for developers to grow the housing pipeline. So for example, providing kind of gap financing, innovative and traditional financing tools. We also work on homelessness prevention and protection, working across with different various partners and entities with key stakeholder organizations on coming up with regional policy making, as well as supporting our service providers to identify, align, and protect programs. And then policy and advocacy, so working across the different counties and local cities to really advance a regional action plan that will really drive us towards reducing homelessness here in the Bay Area. And then finally, systems coordination, which is All Home supporting regional collaboration. So a regional impact council is kind of based on this CASA model, which works around shared goals and interventions. And that's what we're hoping to do at All Home is come to the Redwood City Council at hopefully next month or at a future council meeting to really provide a full presentation of our work in terms of this regional action plan as well as the regional impact council. Next slide. And so lastly, I just wanted to share with you all just a quick statistics of currently the Bay Area homelessness population. As you can see in the slide, there's a total of more than 1,000 residents who are homeless in the Bay Area. And this is 2019 numbers. Obviously, with the pandemic, things have changed. And then, as you can see in the slide, those are the racial inequities that persist across the Bay Area when it comes to our Black families and community members, our Indigenous members, our Hispanic and Latinx members as well. So you can see in the slide in terms of like the numbers and percentages of the disparities and so forth. So I just want to just kind of introduce myself to you all as a Redwood City Council. We have presented to the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors a full presentation of the Regional Action Plan last week, and they have improved or actually have voted to approve and endorse the Regional Action Plan. So we hope to go to the Redwood City Council at a future meeting to give a full presentation. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Torres, for being here. I appreciate it. And this is a problem that affects each and every one of us in our communities. So thank you again for your presentation. We look forward to hearing more. We're now moving on to item number 5, a public comment on the consent calendar on matters of council interest and on items not on the agenda. At this time, we'll take public comment. As I said, items that are on the consent, matters of council interest, items not on the agenda. I'd like to turn it over to City Clerk, and she will facilitate the public comments. Ms. Aguilar?
Thank you, Mayor Howard. Now is the time for public comment. For those who wish to speak tonight, the instructions to participate in public comment are on the screen. We ask that you raise your hand at this time and keep your hand raised so that we can see how many speakers there are. Give it a minute. If you're joining us by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. Okay. It looks like we have a total of 2 speakers. I will just call out who the 2 speakers are. Each of you will get 2 minutes. The timer will begin once you start speaking. Our first speaker is Pat X, and Pat X will be followed by our last speaker for this portion, Amy Buckmaster. Go ahead, Pat.
Since there are only 2 of us, you should allow us 3 minutes each. Mayor Howard, as you know, every month is Asian American History Month. On this date in 1944, the U.S. Supreme Court heard the arguments in the case of Korematsu versus United States and later issues decision upholding the executive order that led to the internment of Japanese Americans. Several years ago, I was at the Redwood City Library downtown, and there was an exhibit there about Redwood City's role in the internment of Japanese Americans. This included things such as Japanese Americans selling all their property for pennies on the dollar to white folks as their parting gift, if you might say, to parting Redwood City and going to an internment camp. Now that you have your equity plan for the city of Redwood City, I strongly recommend that you implement that equity plan starting tomorrow, if not sooner. I thank the board or the committee for its time and consideration. Also to Representative G out here in Redwood Shores. I strongly recommend that more police force be sent here to take care of the continuous and egregious running of stop signs all along Marine Parkway and Redwood Shores Parkway. Yesterday, I saw a woman slow down to all of 5 miles per hour as she went through the stop. This is a continuous issue out here. Police Redwood Shores as strongly as you police District 3 for people engaging in rampant traffic violations. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Our next speaker is Amy Buckmaster. Welcome, Amy.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thank you, Pamela. Well, I am here to do some thank yous because I am just feeling good. We are very lucky to live in this community. Good evening, Mayor Howard and honorable members of the City Council. My name is Amy Buckmaster, and I'm Executive Director of Redwood City Improvement Association. I'm also the CEO of Chamber San Mateo County. I am speaking tonight on item 6D on the consent calendar in regards to the acceptance of the Redwood City Improvement Association's annual report for fiscal year December 1, 2019 through November 30, 2020. I just want to take this time to extend on behalf of the Redwood City Improvement Association Board of Directors our sincere appreciation of the strong leadership of this City Council and the incredible support of the talented city staff for ongoing partnerships we have experienced these past years with the Downtown Community Benefit District, especially these last 24 months. The RCIA closed their fiscal year in November 30, 2019. Never in our wildest dreams would we have imagined what was to come 3 months later in March of 2020. Within days of the shelter in place, the City of Redwood City, the Redwood City Improvement Association, Downtown Business Group, Chamber San Mateo County, and SAMCETA immediately united with one mission: economic survival and recovery pre and post pandemic, and have never stopped. Over the past 20 months, we have collaborated and supported our most vulnerable businesses in downtown Redwood City, especially our restaurants, majority first generation owned, with their life savings invested. We are very proud of the work we have done this past year and will continue to do post pandemic in downtown Redwood City. But none of it will be possible without our amazing partners like you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Amy, very much. Mayor Howard, that concludes public comment for this portion.
Thank you, Ms. Aguilar. Moving on to item number 6, our consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are routine in nature and are approved in one motion. I'd now like to ask council if you have any questions, or would someone like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Like to make a motion. Second the motion.
Okay, Councilmember Aguirre, was that you who made the
Yes.
motion? Okay.
Well, I think a couple of us did, but I'm happy to be second or first. I'm okay.
Yeah, I'd like to also second and or
Oh.
first.
Well, how about we'll have a compromise here. Councilmember Aguirre made the motion. Councilmember Espinoza Garnica made the second. Okay, any discussion? Hearing none, I'll turn it over to the city clerk for the roll call vote.
Thank you. And we will start with Councilmember Aguirre,
Yes.
Councilmember Espinosa Garnica,
Yes.
Councilmember G,
Yes.
Councilmember Reddy,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hale,
Yes.
and Mayor Howard.
Yes,
The motion passes unanimously.
thank you very much. I'll now read all the items that have just been approved. The investment report for period ended June 30th, 2021. Acceptance of the Hazard Mitigation Grant Award from the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, and the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services to the City of Redwood City for the Bradford Storm Drainage Pump Station Improvement Project, and authorization to execute the agreement with Wood Rogers Incorporated. Amendment number 2 to agreement with Metropolitan Planning Group Incorporated for Historical Preservation Services. Accept the annual report from the Redwood City Improvement Association, or RCIA. Resolution accepting a donation of $89,089 from the Redwood City Friends of the Library to support library programs, events, and activities. Resolution declaring the continued state of local emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, supporting continuation of remote meetings to preserve public health and safety. Resolution approving the implementation of the SB 1383 Memorandum of Understanding with the South Bayside Waste Management Authority, MOU. Purchase of 3 2022 Freightliner dump trucks. Approve minutes of September 27th, 2021 City Council meeting. Approve claims and checks from October the 11th, 2021 through October 25th, 2021, and the usual and necessary payments through October 25th, 2021. I also wanted to mention item 6E, in that I wanted to thank the Friends of the Redwood City Public Library. I think on behalf of the council, we can all say how grateful we are to you for the donation of $89,089 to support our 3 Redwood City Library, the programs, events, and activities. This is money that is put into our general fund and earmarked for these programs for the Redwood City Public Library. And without that money, we could not do the work. The library could not do the wonderful work that they do. It's one of the reasons that our Redwood City libraries were ranked in the top 15 in the United States, is because of the fine work of Friends of the Library. So I wanted to thank you so very much for your donation, your support, and your ongoing just the support you give to our Redwood City Library, which is so crucial to our children and adults. And I really appreciate the fine work you've done this year. I believe it in the last 10 years, you've donated over $800,000 for library operations. Keep up the great work. Thank you so very much. Moving on to item number 7, which is a study session on long-term planning for city water, sewer, and storm drain utilities. Our Public Works Services Director, Terrence Jaw, along with Public Works Superintendents Justin Chappell and Cindy Mayono Donray, will give a presentation, and I'll also be presenting on behalf of the Utility Subcommittee. I will turn it over at this time to our Public Works Services Director, Terrence Jaw. Mr. Jaw?
Good evening, Mayor Howard and Council. I just want to check in for the audio level to making sure that my audio is all right for everyone.
I can hear you.
Great, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Howard and Council. I am Terrence Jaw, Director of Public Works. Thank you for the opportunity to present long-term planning for Redwood City Utility Study section. Madam Clerk, next slide, please. As customary, staff develop a question for the council discussion. This slide will repeat at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. The agenda for tonight's study section is staff will present city portable water system, recycled water system, sewer collection system, stormwater drainage system, and roles and responsibility. Mayor Howard, as the chair of the Utility Subcommittee, to present support programs for ratepayers and policy matters regarding utilities. At this point, I'd like to invite Justin Chappell, Superintendent of Water Operation, to present portable water system. Justin.
Thank you, Terrence. Good evening, Mayor Howard and City Council members. Tonight, I'll be speaking about our potable water system. Next slide, please. All of Redwood City's drinking water is purchased from the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. 85% of that water comes from the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir on the Tuolumne River. The remaining 15% comes from local watersheds and reservoirs in the East Bay and on the peninsula. Redwood City has a water supply agreement with SFPUC that includes an individual water supply guarantee for 12,243 acre-feet of water per year. Next slide, please. The city's water system serves about 89,000 customers in Redwood City and portions of the town of Woodside, the city of San Carlos, and unincorporated San Mateo County through about 24,000 service connections and 260 miles of water main. The city has 13 water storage tanks that hold 22 million gallons of water for fire and other emergency uses. Water quality for our drinking water is regulated by the United States Environmental Protection Agency and the State Water Resources Control Board Division of Drinking Water. Public Works monitors water quality through samples taken from 60 dedicated water sampling stations on weekly, monthly, and quarterly schedules. I'm also pleased to report that this June, Public Works completed an inventory of the pipe material for all our water service lines, and no lead service lines were identified. Next slide, please. The Water Fund is a self-supporting enterprise that is paid for by the customers who use it. This includes purchasing water from San Francisco, all operating and maintenance costs, and capital improvements for existing infrastructure. New developments pay towards these costs through water capacity charges and facility fees. And if existing infrastructure cannot meet the requirements of the project, those upgrades are built as part of the project and paid for by the developer. Existing ratepayers are not expected to absorb the cost of expanding the system to address the development needs. To ensure there is adequate revenue to meet operating and capital expenditures, the city conducts rate studies with the help of outside consultants to determine any proposed rate increases. These rate increases are generally needed due to the increased cost to purchase water from San Francisco, and the last adopted rate increase took effect on July 1st, 2018. Next slide, please. Long-range planning for the water system is achieved through two primary documents. The 2020 Urban Water Management Plan, which was adopted in June of this year, forecasts water supply and demand and population and employment growth over a 25-year horizon through 2045. The Water System Master Plan identifies strategies for maintaining and improving water system service levels through the community, through with a level of service goals. These goals include maintain reliable customer service, protect public health and operator safety, and provide cost-effective projects. The state has also adopted regulations that the city will soon be required to comply with. These are the 2018 water conservation legislation, which sets an annual water budget for the water system based on residential, indoor, outdoor water use, and commercial outdoor water use. SB 555 was passed in 2017, and the city has been reporting on the water system losses to the state for the past 5 years. The water loss performance standards aim to reduce real water losses through system leaks and apparent losses through metering accuracy and data handling processes. Next slide, please. This chart is based on information from the 2020 Urban Water Management Plan and shows that through the year 2045, the city's water demand is projected to be well below our contracted individual supply guarantee with the SFPUC, while the water service area population grows steadily. The water supply projections in the Urban Water Management Plan include growth projections in the city's general plan and the gatekeeper projects. Next slide. The water system reliability is improved through the city's capital improvement projects, which are prioritized based on the level of service goals in the 2011 Water System Master Plan. The projects identified in the city's water master plan generally focus on seismic reliability, fire flow, and replacing aging infrastructure. This map shows the locations of the projects the city has completed and is currently working on for the past 5 years, including this current fiscal year, to improve the reliability of the water system. One project not shown on the map is the recent seismic upgrade of the Peninsula 2 water tank in Redwood Shores. Now I'd like to pass the presentation to our Recycled Water Superintendent, Cindy Miliano-Danry.
Thank you, Justin. Good evening, Mayor Howard and council members. I'm very excited to be presenting some highlights regarding the city's recycled water system. Next slide, please. Redwood City Recycled Water Use Ordinance was adopted in July 2008. It established the recycled water service area and the requirements for its use. The city's recycled water is produced by Silicon Valley Clean Water, our wastewater treatment plant out in Redwood Shores. We provided disinfected tertiary recycled water to our customers. Next slide. Tertiary disinfected recycled water means that the water undergoes 3 stages of treatment. Primary treatment for removal of particles and debris, followed by a sedimentation process. Secondary treatment includes biological treatment, aeration, coagulation, and flocculation. At last, tertiary treatment that filters and disinfects the water. Next slide, please. Recycled water operation infrastructure includes 2.18 million gallon storage tanks and a distribution pump station out in Redwood Shores, 5 sample stations for quality control, and approximately 19 miles of distribution pipeline. The current design capacity allows recycled water production of up to 2,000 acre-feet per year. In 2020, I'm pleased to announce that we distributed approximately 269 million gallons of recycled water. Next slide. The city's customer portfolio is the following: 171 irrigation customers, 13 industrial and commercial customers, and 7 dual plumb customers for indoor recycled water use. Next slide, please. Recycled water operation is funded by Enterprise Fund. Essentially, the Recycled Water Fund is a subset of the Water Fund. Generally, significant developments will be contributing to both connection and impact fees that may also be required to expand the recycled water pipeline to their project site. It is important to note that existing ratepayers are not expected to absorb the cost of expanding the system to address development needs. Next slide, please. In 2002, the city completed a feasibility study for the use of recycled water. The study identified irrigation, industrial, and dual plumb opportunities for recycled water in Redwood Shores, the greater Bayfront area around Seaport Boulevard, and central Redwood City west of 101 Highway. The feasibility study was updated in 2012 to include an updated market assessment that identifies pipe alignments for the Phase 2 expansion of recycled water system. The Phase 2A of the project was completed in 2016, a huge milestone in the recycled water system expansion. It brought much needed recycled water west of Highway 101 to serve Redwood City's downtown area near Kaiser Hospital. Next slide. Our utility service planning includes operational water quality sampling that we perform weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annually for a variety of parameters, implementation of our cross-connection control program to ensure public health and proper use of recycled water, compliance with federal, state, county health mandate and regulation. To promote the use of recycled water, the city provides discounted rates that starts at 25% for irrigation customers and 40% for industrial customers, both of which ramp down over time to 10% of discount. The greater benefit, however, is that the recycled water offers a drought-proof supply and is protected from mandatory cutbacks during drought condition. Next slide, please. As part of the long-term utility planning, the city has made a requirement for certain development projects to expand the recycled water pipeline to service their proposed project. The most recent project that is in this picture is the Broadway Plaza project, when they lay the recycled water pipe right in front of the Public Works office. This pipe extending from Kaiser Medical Office Building 2 to their project site on Broadway Street. Construction is at 90% completion. The Greystar 5 mixed-use project planned to extend the pipeline from Kaiser Medical Office Building 2 to their project site over at El Camino Real. The design of this pipe alignment is at 75% completion. Next slide, please. As we expand to serving recycled water indoor for toilet flushing and other non-potable water use, and as we connect more customers, it is critical to have a reliable and dependable recycled water distribution system. The necessity for redundant storage and pumping facilities to reliably serve the greater Redwood City area, including the downtown, becomes extremely critical. The feasibility study identified this need by proposing a second recycled water storage tank and pump station facility in the greater Bayfront area. Funding for this purpose was allocated through the fiscal year 21-22 capital improvement project. However, similar to the potable water system, the greater challenge is acquiring a location for this facility. Next slide. Here is a map of the proposed recycled water pipeline extension to expand the city's recycled water system and connect more customers to preserve our potable water use. At this point, I would like to pass the presentation to Terrence Chia for overview of the wastewater operations section.
Thank you, Cindy. I will now cover for sanitary sewer and stormwater drainage system. I would like to start with sanitary sewer system. Next slide, please. A quick background of the system is city maintained over 184 miles of sewer main pipes and over 109 miles of lower lateral. The lower lateral is the portion of the sewer line starting from the property line to the city sewer main. Redwood City sewer system is a complex system. Except for the Redwood Shore, the system is a gravity flow system. However, due to the geographical location of the Redwood Shores, the system relies on 31 sewer lift stations. The city sewer conveyance system is also providing pass-through services to the 6 other sewer districts. Next slide, please. This is an infographic of the sewer lateral. It has divided into 2 sections. The upper lateral is from the building to the property line. The lower lateral is from the property line to the city sewer main. Homeowners are responsible for the home to the property line, and city will be responsible from the property line to the city sewer main. Redwood City is one of very few cities that responsible for the lower lateral, which is the most expensive part of the sewer lateral to repair. Next slide, please. In order to effective and prevent environmental damages, the sewer system followed 3 service planning activities. The first activity is Sanitary Sewer Management Plan. The plan provided detailed action needed to take action on preventive maintenance of the sewer system cleaning, sewer pump station inspection, and maintenance. The second planning activity is Sewer System Master Plan that is being managed by the Community Development and Transportation Department. The master plan lays out a systematic replacement for the aging infrastructure. The final planning activity is to prevent fats, oil, and grease going into the sewer system. This council approved the fat, oil, and grease ordinance last year. Next slide, please. The city is also invested in technology to monitor the entire sewer system to prevent sanitary sewer overflow. The use of supervisory control and data acquisition, also known as SCADA system, to monitor all the sewer pump stations. Staff also use smart covers to monitor the level of sewage flow in the pipe. Deployment of the composite auto samplers in the key location of the conveyance system to monitor total suspended solids, also known as TSS, and biochemical oxygen demand, also known as BOD. Next slide, please. This slide shows the number of employees working for the sewer system with revenue, expenditures, and the annual contribution for the capital improvements. Next slide, please. I will now move on to the stormwater drainage system. Next slide, please. Similar to other utility, stormwater drainage system has a large infrastructure. It has 17 pump stations, approximately 4,000 storm drain inlets, including with over 400 trash capture devices, over 10 miles of creek and canal to maintain, and 280 acres of lagoons in Redwood Shore, and 6.8 miles of levee. And this system also faces the impact of the climate change. Notably, increased vegetation and algae management in Redwood Shore Lagoon due to the increased warmer days. Also, king tides and large storm events that could lead to regionalized flooding. Next slide, please. This is an overview of staffing level, revenue, expenditure, and capital improvement costs. Unlike water and sewer utility, this system is solely rely on general fund contribution. Utility user tax and small funding source from Measure M revenue contribute small amount for this program. Measure M is the funding is based on the vehicle registration. Next slide, please. To prevent localized flooding, the department performed annual creek and canals maintenance, manage aquatic vegetation and algae in Redwood Shore Lagoon, making sure all storm pump stations are ready for the storm events. At minimum, twice a year, cleaning for all storm drain inlets. We also perform stormwater business inspection in compliance with municipal regional permit. Next slide, please. This image shows the current Bayfront Canal stormwater flow and the floodgate control system. Next slide, please. Currently, the city is working together with various agencies to construct Bayfront Canal stormwater diversion project. Public Works will manage the operation of the diversion pump station after the project is completed. Next slide, please. This is an image of the Bay Shoreline Project to protect Redwood Shore community from sea level rise and flood protection. This project is in very early stage of the collaboration effort between County, Redwood City, and City of San Carlos. Next slide, please. The green infrastructure is a new requirement for the stormwater management. State of California Stormwater Resource Planning Act, also known as SB 985, requires local and regional government agencies to develop green infrastructure plan. The goal is to minimize stormwater runoffs going into oceans. The urban stormwater runoffs are mostly polluted due to human activities. Public agencies are developing green infrastructure method to meet the regulatory requirements. As shown on the slide, from the green infrastructure in private or public parcel to adjacent to sidewalk and street, and a large regional stormwater capture system. Next slide, please. This slide shows the green infrastructure in public right-of-way, similar to recently completed Middlefield Road improvement projects. Next slide, please. This slide shows a conceptual design of the regional program, which will cost millions of dollars to construct and to maintain. Next slide, please. I also wanted to highlight roles and responsibility of the city utility. The goals of long-term planning for the city utility are to provide safe and reliable utility service to the community, to ensure enough water for the existing community and the future developments, to ensure enough sewage capacity for existing community and the future developments, to adapt the climate change. To meet this goal, it is a team effort. Public Works manage operation and maintenance. Community Development and Transportation Department oversee capital improvement projects. Administrative Services Department is responsible for billing and customer services. Staff meets several times a year with the Utility Subcommittee to provide updates and see inputs on the policy issue related to utilities before bringing the item for the full council consideration. There are many ongoing items surrounding the utility, such as potential water supply issue relating to the Bay Delta plan, updating on capital improvement plan for replacing aging infrastructure, updating on regulatory requirement, and most importantly, utility rate adjustment to meet the funding need for the reliable infrastructure. Current utility subcommittee members are Mayor Howard, Councilmember Reddy, and Councilmember Espinosa Garnica. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to invite Mayor Howard, the chair of the City Council Utility Subcommittee, to provide an overview of utility-related assistance programs and policy matters regarding utilities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jaw. The Utilities Subcommittee meets regularly with our staff to provide input on all utility-related matters. Besides water, recycled water, sanitary sewer, the committee also provides input on solid waste. The committee will have a meeting coming up to listen to staff proposal about solid waste rates. Most utilities are underground and residents are not aware of the conditions of these infrastructures. This council and councils before us steadfastly invested in reliable utility infrastructure for the community. For example, the history going back to general improvement district bonds to improve Redwood Creek to prevent flooding in the town. We may have to utilize a similar approach again in the future to address climate change and rising sea level. One of the goals of the subcommittee is to minimize rate spikes to the residents, despite various outside factors, drive the majority of rate increase requirements. I'm proud to let the community know that Redwood City is providing water and sewer rate assistance programs to residents with limited income and looking into expanding the assistance program to solid waste customers. During the early time of the pandemic, this council voted to reduce a 3% water and sewer bill credit to all water and sewer customers. In addition, realizing the challenges the community faced during the pandemic, the council voted to waive late payment penalties and interest for solid waste, water, and sewer utilities for the period through December 2021 for residential and commercial customers. Currently, the work for the utility bill forgiveness program is underway. Next slide, please. If implemented, the 2018 Bay Delta Plan adopted by the State Water Resources Control Board could impact the city's water supply during dry years. In partnership with the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency, or BOSCA, the city is advocating for the Water Board to evaluate the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement, which enables a reliable water supply for the Redwood City and the environment. The city is considering collecting sewer rates through property tax bills to reduce the administrative costs associated with sewer billing. City Council has asked staff to conduct additional research and community engagement on this approach during fiscal year 2021-22. Staff plans to provide an update on this process to the Utility Subcommittee in early 2022. Water rates were last increased in July 2018, and sewer rates were increased this past July. Staff will be working this fiscal year to update rate studies and cash flow projections for each utility and provide recommendations for any potential rate increases next fiscal year. Funding for the stormwater system is currently provided primarily through the general fund. Staff is exploring options for a dedicated funding source for the ongoing maintenance and capital needs to ensure a reliable system. I'd now like to hand it back over to Terrence to close. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Howard. Next slide, please. As this is the end of our presentations, and staff are here to answer any question Mayor and the council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jaw. At this time, I'd like to ask the City Council if you have any questions or comments or feedback that you would provide. It is a study session. There will be no formal action taken this evening, but I know staff is interested in hearing your thoughts on the report that's been given. We'll start with Council Member Reddy.
Thank you so much, Mayor Howard, and thank you, staff, for this amazing report. So am I to assume we are not opening this up to the public? Because I don't have any questions. I just had a couple of comments.
Council Member Reddy, we're going to be having public comment following the discussion by council. This is something we started doing with study sessions so that we could get all the information from council, recognizing we're not taking formal action this evening. Yep. So the staff, the public will have a chance to hear from staff as well as the council, and then they will be able to speak at the end of that.
Thank you so much for that that reminder. I didn't want to speak out of turn. To staff, I wondered if we might be able to go back to the slide where we're showing the water usage over the next 20 years. I think it's something, it's a slide that deserves a pause. And I should have made note of the number. It was a graph.
I think it's slide number 9.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought it was something like that. So just to repeat the comment that was made by staff, the blue represents projected water, potable water use until 2045. And I just want to give pause to to the remarkable lack of increase over those 20 years. And the increase in recycled water, which is going to be serving new development, which is going to be bringing in thousands, possibly thousands of new residents by 2045. So I just thought this slide deserved a pause. And I also wanted to just make the comment of how pleased I was to hear that we no longer have water being conveyed in lead pipes. I was very pleased to hear that. I didn't know that. And I wanted to also put a little light on that little piece of information. I thought that was really, really important for us to know. Thank you so much for the report. And that's all. Those are all my comments.
Mr. John, following on what Council Member Reddy was asking, could I ask for a clarification? Those projections, are they based on any decision that will be made in the future regarding the Tuolumne River? Will it improve actually if the suggested alternative is used? Is this based on what's currently being projected?
Thank you, Mayor. For this question, I would like to defer the answer by the Water Operations Superintendent, Justin Chappell.
So these projections, thank you, Terrence. So these projections are based on our plans without the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement. So this is just normal year. So the Tuolumne River Voluntary Agreement would help us out in dry years, but this is normal year projections.
Thank you for that qualification. I appreciate it. Council Member Espinoza Garnica.
Hi, this is feedback. Just quick comments about just appreciation I have for the Utilities Department and the presentation today. All the work that they're doing is very efficient and conscientious. I really appreciate the work you're doing to even make it greener and using potable water. I think it's very efficient and you know, forward thinking. And so thank you for all your very technical expertise. And you know, this is going to help us a lot with especially the stormwaters. I just really appreciate all the work that's going into this to help prevent, you know, further flooding and just having more efficient use of our water system. And so thank you for all the work you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Council Member Smith.
Thank you, Mayor Howard. I appreciate the opportunity to speak. I'd like to second the comments of my colleagues that have spoken before me. I will say that I never knew that I would be thinking so critically about water and our water infrastructure as a new council member, but this is obviously like the really, really important stuff that the city has to take on. And it's kind of part of the thankless job to a certain extent that the city has, because it's when it's working well, people are not necessarily talking about it, but obviously when things are not going well, that's when we need to have concern. So I appreciate the forward-lookingness of this report. I do have a couple questions. So the first thing I want to start out with is the Bay Delta plan. So in the staff report, it seems to suggest that the plan is facing several lawsuits. I'm kind of wondering if someone could speak to a little bit about the merits of the lawsuits and how that would ultimately impact the plans that the Bay Delta plan is looking to bring to the city.
Thank you, Council Member Smith. So this Build Delta plan is a complex methodology involved, because this is kind of like the environmental side of the issue, then water requirement for the community, and then the normal water years and drought water years, then very much complex for the answer in the one sitting. The best is that we should wait for a little bit, because the current council are actively pursuing for the advocacy with the the finest solution. So I think at this point, it's everything that what we're going to say is a little bit of premature for what will be become happening with the Bay Delta plan.
Got it. Yeah, I'd love to just kind of get perhaps a more specific point of view on that, because it seems like it is a part of the drought mitigation plan that we have in place. And if it is being kind of stalled by lawsuits, I guess I'm kind of wondering how that impacts us and our use of the Bay Delta plan in helping to address drought. But we can come back to that for sure, no problem. I did want to ask another question about
Councilmember Smith, our city attorney had her hand raised. She may be wanting to address the question you just raised. Ms. Ramirez?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilmember Smith, for that response. Really, as our Public Works Director said, you kind of asked the million-dollar question, and we really can't answer it, but I do think it's a fair question, and I'd be happy to follow up with a summary of kind of what is at issue and what are the competing interests and where we are and what we're hoping for, both with the legislative advocacy as well as the legal situation that we're dealing with right now.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Ms. Ramirez. Great. So my second question is just about the dedicated funding source for, I believe it was the rainwater, forgetting exactly which one we talked about exploring. Sorry about that. But I guess I'm kind of wondering what processes would the city have to pursue in order to get that dedicated funding source? How long would that process take? Any insight around or detail around that dedicated funding source issue would be great.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Smith. So when it comes to the stormwater system, unlike as I mentioned during the presentation, water and sewer utilities are being funded by the ratepayers. Stormwater system doesn't have any funding source. So generally rely on the general funds. In the Redwood City, going back to the Redwood City history, going back to the early 60s, what we call it GID 162, that community general improvement district bond that created to line the Redwood Creek to concrete lining to make sure to prevent flooding during the rain events. So that's why even though heavy rain happen, those home near Redwood Creek, not to worry about flooding because that is a stormwater conveyance system. That is community contributed community development improvement district general improvement district bond. GID 162 were developed. Similar to in the Redwood Shore, that is the general improvement district bond, GID 164, created to make it Redwood Shore improvement. So that's one method to do about it. Another process and procedure to go about is part of the portion of the property tax dedicated for the stormwater related activity. That is kind of like a majority of voter approval required, and that's another process we can go about it. And that option is we can pursue for the grant and then opportunity that coming along, but those are kind of like harder to compete with the many other agencies. Also saw the city manager raise their hands.
Okay.
And I would just add on to say that the Finance and Audit Subcommittee periodically considers opportunities for increasing revenues. That's part of the ongoing work of the committee. And often that has focused on operating needs, but has also looked at ongoing needs associated with transportation and with other infrastructure needs. And so I would say in general, whether or not we're looking at a bond issuance or something that needs voter support, it's easily an 18-month plus process to really plan for and properly bring that forward.
Got it. And would there at this point be a preference between the bond measure and a referendum-based funding source related to property taxes at this point, or do you not have an opinion yet?
Yeah, great question. And actually, we haven't analyzed that. And so that's something that would be something subject to further study. I would note we're certainly at historically low interest rates. And so there's some advantage to that. But there are pros and cons with each of those approaches.
Got it. And then I just have one last question. Sorry to take up so much time, folks. But my question was just about assessing the impact of, let's say, larger scale development. So I know that you guys called out Gray Star 5 as well as Broadway Plaza. I'm kind of wondering, could someone talk to me a little bit about how impact is assessed over the long term? And so I would imagine that part of the impact is assessed in the environmental impact report, which I understand is like ring fenced by some period of time. But I guess I'm wondering how fees are assessed in reference to, let's say, 20, 30 years out for larger scale developments, if at all.
Councilmember Smith, I think I might have to defer this question to Community Development and Transportation Department. Maybe like one of the, James O'Connell is with us, the senior engineer from Community Development Department. He might be able to highlight some of the issue that you raised.
So, evening council members. So as far as the long-term, view, it's not really done. We mostly look at the current impacts. And so as part of the entitlement review, and certainly as part of the CEQA documentation, that's all studied very closely. So they have to do the necessary study, necessary analysis, and install the necessary improvements and or pay into funds.
Right. Okay. Well, those are the last of my questions. I'll just leave off by saying, obviously this is a very complex subject matter. I think that we certainly need to have a long-term view on all of these issues related to water. And be that with development impact fees, be that with the development of a dedicated funding source for stormwater, and so on and so forth. I would just encourage staff to be thinking, decades out, as opposed to kind of, let's say, in the more immediate term. So with that said, thank you so much for your report. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Council Member Smith. Council Member G.
Thank you, Mayor Howard, Terrence, Justin, and Cindy. Thank you and all the team members for the presentation. And Mayor Howard, thank you and the Utilities Subcommittee. I think, Mayor Howard, you said it in one of your comments that the utilities being underground are usually out of sight, out of mind until it breaks, and everyone goes, how come? And so, as Councilmember Smith said, the long-term strategic planning for the maintenance and operations of our underground utility systems and how we pay for that maintenance is really, really critical. So, Terrence, a couple questions. How do we manage the miles of utilities and the pumps and everything that we have? Do we have like a computerized maintenance management system to be able to track all the pumps and the panels and the pipes that go with the utility systems that you just described?
Thank you, Councilmember G. Yes, we used to be on paper and pencil methodology and keeping all the record book on the banker box. And if something happened, we have to go back up to the record archive and just flipping each and every pages, right? So since 2012, City of Redwood City Public Works deployed a computerized work order management system that's also attached to the city GIS system, so that if water main breaks in the Redwood City somewhere, staff will go out there and repair the water main breaks, as well as they bring their iPad with them. They identify the works, they identify the type of the pipe, they identify the repair work that they do. It's already recorded in the system, so that our community development and transportation engineering staff analyze these kind of data point to making sure that where is our weak spot, what is the area that they need to prioritize. Used to be we have to have a different type of marker on the map, then mark it down for location that water main break or sewer backup or all kind of utility related issue. Now everything on the computerized system. You want to look at the one particular address, you can type into the search word, and we know exactly what happened to that particular location in the last 9 years or 8 years.
Terrence, thank you. I'm glad we graduated from paper and pencil into something a little more sustainable and reliable, hopefully, and we don't lose the banker box or the pieces of paper. But I'm glad we've done that. What kind of grade would you give our utility systems? If a letter grade A, B, C, D, E, or F?
I kind of like grew up in public work, so I kind of like a little bit biased, but I would say that our system is at least the B+ status. The reason being is that, thanks to our brother and sister of the Community Development Department, they have step first capital improvement program that put it on year after year that give Redwood City a reliable water storage system, reliable sewer pump station, reliable stormwater pump station, and reliable, storm drainage system. So those are the ones that is benefit us for, especially for the community that, you can look at some other agency or some other city, they don't even have a water storage system, and they are pay as we go. They only use the water that's provided by SFPUC. If it is SFPUC line breaks somewhere, up in the Tuolumne River or up in the Delta, those cities will not have a water to use. For the Redwood City, we have a water storage tank that continues providing the water service to the community until the system come back on. Similar to sewer conveyance system, we have the main issue with the sewer conveyance system. It used to be that is only sewer main line passing through the 101 from the west side of the 101 to the east side, connected to the Silicon Valley Clean Water. Since 2012, city constructed the another system, the redundancy system underneath the 101. So in case of the one sewer line having an issue, we can switch it over to the second sewer main. So those are the kind of like a system that make us, feel good, and then make us feel good for the community that we have a reliable system for the community here. But this is kind of like not stop here. This is a continuous replacement process. System is aging, we are continuously replacing, and then cost of construction are continuously rising as well.
Unfortunately, I would agree with the last comment. Time is not a friend to construction costs. It seems to go up every year. So thank you for the diligence on that. Drilling down into a couple systems, I love the recycled water systems growth and its use. I think Mayor Howard remembers the late night meetings and the difficulty of making that decision, but it was a tremendous decision by the council to go down that path. And slide 9, as Councilmember already called out, shows how important it is to our community. During this year's drought, there was a request to see if we can bring back the fill station. I doubt the drought will be over next year, but is there a possibility of bringing back the fill station for recycled water next year?
Thank you, Councilmember G. Since Broadway Plaza recycled water main extension, Public Works Service Department will have a recycled water in front of our corporation yard. This will help us to create the recycled water fill station. Previously, recycled water fill station always been a remote place and very costly to operate. If we have a recycled water right in front of the copier, there could be possibility of having the recycled water, automatic recycled water fill station for the community.
That'll be great because, it is a long haul to get to the Silicon Valley Clean Water Station, and having it at the courtyard would be great to be able to have that happen next year. And then lastly, on the lagoon system out here, it is a lagoon, but as you mentioned, it's part of the stormwater retention system out here in Redwood Shores. And typically the water level is lowered in the coming months, starting I think as soon as November. I would ask, to the extent we can, that there's an audit of the lagoon, or maybe not lagoon, that's probably stereotyping things a little too much, but an audit of where the water meets the shore, because there are places where there are not homes and erosion is occurring, and where we can provide greater clarity about who's responsible is the first step in hopefully getting some of that erosion corrected. So hopefully some sort of audit can be done. But again, congratulations and thank you for all the hard work. Love to hopefully see where we can get maybe the Utilities Subcommittee, Mayor Howard can check in on a regular basis to see that we're staying at a B+, and maybe we can stretch to get to an A-, but we're always balancing the cost of the ratepayers along with that too. But again, thank you everybody for all the hard work. I appreciate the presentation tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember G. I wanted to piggyback on the fill station comment because I've been hearing from members of the community wanting to know they want to do more of reusing recycled water. And I'm wondering if there's any discussion in the future, the possibility of getting a delivery truck. If it's paid for, if someone wants it delivered to their home and they're willing to pay for that service, is there a company that would do it that we could contract with, or the possible purchase of it? I'm not asking for an answer now, but I'd like to see if our utility committee could discuss it with staff to see if there's a possibility in the future for raising awareness by having more people request recycled water and use it. And if it's delivered to their home, we might get more compliance in its usage. So thank you. That's just to put on our plate for a future agenda. Thank you. Councilmember Aguirre.
Thank you, Mayor. I think for all of us, we're so aware there's no more important thing than water. And the fact that Redwood City was so proactive, and Councilmember Smith's talk about long-term planning. Well, to get to where we were, as mentioned by Councilmember G, it took a lot of work to get this recycled water. I'm so proud that we have it. We still have a lot to do now as we distribute it. I had the same concerns and questions about the fill stations, you know, that people have requested. They see the value. There was a time when recycled water was a taboo. You know, it's like, we don't want the toilet water. It was just such a huge issue in our community. And now it's turned around and said, we want the good recycled water. And we want it, you know, to do things that we shouldn't be doing with regular tap water, you know, and especially in times of drought. And just to see the advancements of the pump station, the canal, and all the things that we've been able to achieve is just such a great coup. I wasn't there for the recycled building of the plant, but I have benefited from being on Silicon Valley Clean Water and seeing what we're able to do as we move forward, and now the benefits that our community has, and being able to bring it over now to this development. I mean, people have to understand it took a long time to get here, and the history of really bringing this forward, and we're very fortunate in Redwood City to have it. And I'll be talking a little bit more about that when I present on Silicon Valley Clean Water and just the value of what we've been able to do. I think you'll be able to put the pieces together. So no questions, just congratulations to our Public Works Department. A big thanks to our subcommittee headed by our mayor. You're doing amazing things. And I know it's always a very interesting committee to work on because it's really our infrastructure. And we all know in this country what that looks like. And no matter how soon you fix it, you have to go back and start again. It's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge, right? As soon as you finish it, you got to start from the beginning. And that's what infrastructure is. So I just want to thank everyone for the work they're doing, and having lived through some of the process and knowing how we need to continue to move forward, because we've done a lot, but we haven't done enough. And what does that look like? So thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Aguirre. And thank you for your service on Silicon Valley Clean Water. We're all working together.
Right.
Vice Mayor Hale.
Thank you, Mayor and colleagues. I'm just really enjoying listening to this discussion. First of all, fascinating. This is just so fascinating to understand the inner workings of how we simply are able to turn on the tap and get a clean glass of water whenever we want, and what a simple luxury that is. I want to say thank you to staff for that illuminating presentation, to the mayor and to the other members of the commission. It was helpful to hear about your, to the committee, your participation, and then to my colleagues for your amazing questions. I only have one well, first I had a comment and then I had a question. My comment echoes where Councilmember Reddy focused, which is, I do think that there is a lot of environmental fear and anxiety for probably the right reasons growing in our community and our society. But I do think that there is some misplaced fear about water and the number of residents that we serve. Certainly, as we seek to meet our RENA numbers, that will mean welcoming new residents into Redwood City. And we do often hear about a fear about where will the water come from. And what I thought was so illuminating about the chart on, let's see, what slide was that? Slide 9 was there's a solution for exactly where the water will come from. So not the, maybe not everybody would find this as interesting, but I think it'd be wonderful to get this message out to the community, particularly as we embark on some of these growth initiatives, that there is a plan that is well vetted for where the water will come from. My question kind of springs off of what Councilmember G was asking, is when you think about this space, what is are there any new areas of technology that perhaps aren't ready for prime time, but that you and our staff are watching closely that you think will be a game changer for how we deliver utilities in Redwood City?
Mr. Jaw?
I'm sorry, Mayor, I lost my connection and I'm coming back. I just want to make sure, can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's nice to have you back.
Do you need
Thank
me
you.
should I repeat the question?
Please.
No problem. I'm sorry you lost connection. That's so frustrating when that happened.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know if there are any new technologies that perhaps aren't ready for prime time, but that you believe will impact our ability to deliver utility services in the not so distant future in Redwood City.
Vice Mayor, can you a little bit expand it about the delivering utility with the technology to try to capture a little more about your comments?
Yeah, I mean, an example might be even looking at recycled water and how, sort of controversial it was and nascent many years ago when we implemented it, and now how much more of the load it's going to start to carry to help to meet our water needs. So that might be one example, but I don't know what the other examples are because I'm not fully familiar with the technology in this space.
Okay, I think like the obvious technology that we've been deploying throughout the city is a smart meter that we used to go to each and every home to every other month to read the water usage. Now is automatically transmitted to us. And then second technology that we are about to deploy is what we call it is a zone metering system. So what is zone metering system is due to the various water zoning, we have a specific smart meter installed and the monitoring the water leak. So that in the event of water main breaks or in case of irregular water consumption happen, we will immediately know that that is something's happening. Those are kind of like continuous monitoring system for the water. Also similar to the stormwater sites, we have a water level monitoring system deployed on the Bayfront Canal. So we used to physically go out and take a look at it and the water level and make a judgment call about when we're going to open the tide gates and things like that. But now that we have a smart water level monitoring system, they're monitoring all the time so that staff will have the water level information in their smartphone 24/7, that in the event or even the middle of the night, they know how much of the water is in the Bayfront Canal and the time to divert the water or the closest tide gate. Those kind of information are available for the staff.
Ms. Molyono Donray has her hand raised.
Howard, just to answer Vice Mayor Hale, also in addition to what Terrence saying, that was great with automatic metering to minimize our water loss in the system. However, I would like to highlight our participation in the potable reuse exploratory plan. So Vice Mayor Hale, you were talking about recycled water. So basically this is potable, so basically it's recycled water reuse for potable water. So that's up and coming. We are currently in the study, in the feasibility study with partnering agency around us like San Mateo, Foster City, San Francisco Public Utilities, and Silicon Valley Clean Water. So we're working together as a region to try to push for potable reuse for the future.
That's phenomenal. Thank you. That was exactly the type of thing I was looking for. And it's just great to hear that not only are those initiatives underway, but that we're a part of them and a part of the pilot. So I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Jaw, I wanted to know, at this time in San Mateo County, we are the only city that really made the major investment and in recycled water and in the plant, and the future back then, and that seemed so long ago. We were talking about working with other cities and planning for other cities to be able to take advantage and help defray the cost of a system that needs ongoing infrastructure needs to stay vital and viable. So I was wondering, do we have anything in the future that will enable us to hook up to other cities, or do other cities plan to hook up to us in the future?
Thank you, Mayor Howard. We are always open for the any type of collaboration activity, the actions that when come to the recycled water. Just also wanted to let you know that the use of recycled water is very heavily controlled by the State Department, Regional Water Board, Division of Drinking Water, so that we need to be compliant with their requirements. So any agency that interested to join hand with us to use or recycle water, we are always welcome to have a discussion with them.
Sorry, and thank you. I appreciate that. I always felt it was a possibility, but no one has stepped up. So who knows? Maybe after tonight, someone will have interest. I wanted to say thank you to my colleagues for their wonderful, very, very good questions and the feedback. I'm sorry, I'm being asked a question. Miss Aguirre, Councilmember Aguirre, was that from before, or did you have an additional question?
No, that's from before. I apologize.
Okay, thank you. No problem. I wanted to agree about that we need to find, eventually, at least do the study about finding a designated funding source for the stormwater drainage that's going to need capital improvements. I agree with that comment. I noticed several times that future storage and infrastructure was needed and that funding was being collected, but that the biggest deterrent was the location, finding locations for the storage that we need. So I'm wondering if that some thought could be put into, instead of saying that's what it is, maybe we put some thought into how do we address that problem? That seems like a real deterrent over time and may take a lot of time to study. So maybe we need to have that conversation, whether it be an outside consultant or if we have that expertise in-house. I'm guessing we need to look at that sooner rather than later so that we do identify areas for future storage or infrastructure, especially downtown. Now that we have a brand new neighborhood, a new population there in downtown. As far as larger projects, Councilmember Smith mentioned infrastructure and overall lifetime of the project. Maybe we should be looking at that, because as these projects develop, they will require ongoing infrastructure needs as we go down the road in this community. How do we pay for that? And do we have some way of identifying income from projects over a longer period of time, as Councilmember Smith suggested, 10, 20, 30 years time? How do we do that? So that's another discussion item. I just wanted to end before public comment and say that I call Public Works our unsung heroes. And I really definitely mean that, because they were our first line of defense and our front line defense during COVID from the very beginning. They were working 24/7. We didn't have interruptions of our service. You may have noticed that we were all at home. We weren't able to leave, and we still had our water, our sewer, our utilities. And that's thanks to our public works workers. And I want to thank them. They are the unsung heroes. Out of sight, out of mind, it's easy to forget. There are men and women out there who are working to keep this city running really, really well. And they are very, very good at what they do. So, Mr. Jaw, please send our best wishes, regards, and thank yous to your staff. I really appreciate the presentation this evening and the hard work that you all do every day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
I'd like to now take public comment on this study session item, and I'd like to turn it over to our city clerk to facilitate public comment.
Thank you, Mayor Howard. Now is the time for public comment on agenda item 7A that we just heard about, the long-term planning for city water, sewer, and storm drain utilities. If you wish to speak on this topic, we ask that you please raise your hand now and keep your hand raised so that we could see how many speakers we have. Okay. Mayor Howard, it looks like we don't have any raised hands from our public attendees at this time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Aguilar. As I mentioned, this is a study session, and we will not be taking final action this evening, but I want to thank again our staff for making such an excellent presentation, and for my colleagues for bringing up such interesting questions and observations. I think it was a very good study session. Moving on to item 8A, which is waive the first reading and introduce an ordinance amending Chapter 8 of the Redwood City Municipal Code, incorporating shared micromobility services in Redwood City, and adopt contingent on the adoption of the ordinance amending Chapter 8, the resolution adopting certain fees for shared micromobility services. Our transportation manager, Jessica Manzi, and Senior Transportation Planner, Malahat Orang, will give a presentation. Ms. Manzi, would you like to begin?
I would, thank you. And here we go. As you mentioned, I'm Jessica Manzi, Redwood City's Transportation Manager. Tonight, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to this item before handing it off to my colleague, Malahat Orang. At the September 13th City Council meeting, we held a study session on whether to have a shared micromobility program in Redwood City. At that meeting, the City Council had positive comments about the program and directed us to return and proceed with creating a shared micromobility program. So tonight we are introducing the ordinance for its first reading and proposing fees to offset the cost of the program. So as you listen to the presentation tonight, please keep these questions in mind. First, whether you have questions about the program, are there any modifications that should be made? And finally, what educational messages should be prioritized if an operator starts service in Redwood City? Shared micromobility is the term used to describe programs that offer shared devices like bicycles or scooters to the public for a fee. What we're discussing tonight is amending our municipal code to allow third parties to rent shared micromobility devices to the public in Redwood City. Due to recent changes in state law, micromobility vendors are prohibited from operating in jurisdictions without a permit. Moving ahead with a program would allow vendors to apply for a permit to operate in Redwood City and clearly outline our expectations for how they operate. Our primary interest in allowing shared micromobility operations is to advance the city's goals around mobility and climate sustainability, which also support recovery of our local businesses. A successful program will increase access to businesses, city facilities like parks and libraries, and community services. It will also increase the number of trips in Redwood City that are made safely without driving, helping achieve our goal of having over 50% of trips being made by non-driving modes by 2040. Now I'll hand the presentation over to Malahat for more information on the proposed ordinance and fees based on what we've learned from other agencies and the City Council during this study session.
Good evening. I am Malahat Orang, Senior Transportation Planner with the Community Development and Transportation Department. At the study session, we discussed what is included in the proposed ordinance and administrative regulations. The program's purpose is to provide a safe, convenient, and sustainable way to make short and first-class mile connection trips happen without driving. The ordinance is prepared in a way to reduce potential conflicts between shared micromobility devices and pedestrian ways, emergency services, driveways, doorways, and access to businesses. After the City Council's direction to move ahead with the program, we made some changes to the ordinance and added the impoundment fee and process to respond to unauthorized operation of these devices. I have to note that the administrative regulations that implement the ordinance prohibit illegal parking of these devices and reduce potential nuisances caused by unsafe drivers and riders' behavior, such as speeding or riding at prohibited zones like Caltrain platforms. Next slide, please. Based on our fee study, we are proposing 4 fees to cover the cost of operating the program. Since the study session, we added the last fee to cover the staff time spent on impounding and storaging the unauthorized devices. We will revisit the fees annually to make sure the collected fees cover the actual staff time spent to manage and enforce the program. Operators who may want to launch their services in Redwood City are required to do marketing and public education, especially safety education. One of the potential costs that may happen in future is the city staff time spent on safety education, which could be addressed with revisions, with fee revisions. Next slide, please. As outlined during the study session, the program includes a number of requirements to ensure that a broader cross-section of the community have access to the program and could benefit from that. We are requiring operators to provide payment options other than credit cards, to provide options to riders without a smartphone so they can activate their account with text messaging, to provide bilingual educational materials, have accessible services, and provide 24/7 toll-free customer service. We are also strongly encouraging operators in our permit application to provide discounted ride to low-income riders and focus on creating jobs locally. Next slide, please. So tonight we have 3 recommendations to the City Council. Hold a public hearing, waive the first reading and introduce the ordinance and adopt the resolution of fees for shared micromobility services in Redwood City. Next slide, please. So for tonight, here again, the questions that Jessica mentioned at the beginning of the presentation. We have these questions from the City Council. Do you have any additional question about the program? Are there any modification needed to the proposed ordinance or resolution? And what topics should be prioritized for community education if and when an operator starts their services in Redwood City? So this was our last slide. We are now ready to answer any question. If you have any question, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Manzi. Did you have anything to finish with before we?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we go to public comment, would there be any clarifying questions? Councilmember Reddy?
Thank you, Mayor Howard. And thank you very much for this presentation. I'm really excited about this proposal, and I appreciate your mentioning it, but I still have this vision of scooters being left in lagoons and of people on scooters mowing people down on the sidewalk. And I'm just wondering what kinds of things have other cities done in order to discourage bad behavior? And is there a way for us to feel assured that bad behavior will not be arriving in Redwood City?
I can answer that. The other cities, what they included, I mean, the bad behavior happens, and since all these devices, people have to have a profile, have to create a profile to ride these services, even if they don't install the app on their smartphone and activate their account by text message, they have a profile with that shared micromobility operator. So since all these devices, they have the GPS, the operators know the rider. So if that happens frequently with the rider, they won't provide that service to the rider. That's, I guess, is the way they can control the bad behavior from riders. One thing that other cities did, and we included in our administrative regulation, is requiring operators to do rebalancing and check the location of their devices live and do rebalancing. We are requiring in our admin regulations to do rebalancing once every day, and in high use areas like downtown, twice every day. So if there is something left in the lagoon, the operators know, and they have to go and fix it within a day.
Thank you. That's very helpful information.
Thank you, Councilmember Reddy. I will now open the public hearing, and I'd like to turn it over to our city clerk to facilitate public comment.
Thank you, Mayor Howard. Now is the time for public comment on agenda item 8A. And this is the ordinance amendment to incorporate micromobility services and then the related fees. And at this time, if you wish to speak on this topic, please raise your hand. Keep your hand raised so that we can see how many speakers we have. Okay, it looks like we have one speaker, and you will have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will begin once you start speaking. Our first and our only speaker on this topic tonight is Taylor Pope. Go ahead, Taylor.
Hi, I'm just calling in to speak in favor of these shared micromobility uses. I have had the occasion to use them infrequently while traveling, and found that they greatly increase the ease of getting around a city without having to rely on infrequent public transit or renting a car, or even, and I would be excited to have them around a city that I live in to make it easier to make other car-free trips to avoid adding to the congestion of traffic. And I also would like to just point out that these programs, while they are still developing, have been successful in other areas, and would bring a lot of extra life to the streets in Redwood City. And I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Taylor, very much for your comments. And that is the end of public comment, Mayor Howard, for this item.
Thank you, Ms. Aguilar. I'll now close the public hearing and open it up to council discussion. Who would like to begin? And we have the city council questions up on the screen. Does anyone have any? Councilmember G.
Thank you, Mayor Howard. Appreciate the staff presentation. There are only two things I have that are thoughts. One is to make sure that fees cover the staff commitment, and we'll know that in a year, whether it's working or fees need to be increased or adjusted. And the second thing is on the last bullet is there needs to be a kind of a robust education component with not only the people using the e-bikes or scooters or whatever, but the driving public, so that everyone can learn how to coexist together on our city streets. Otherwise, thank you for the presentation. I look forward to moving this forward. Thank you, Mayor Howard.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Hale.
Thank you, Mayor. Very similar to Councilmember G. I think we need to be marking it on the calendar to check in on this. I'm certain this will be noted by the public when they see these devices around town. And we want to make sure that there's good safety and education. So I just hope we'll be keeping a watch on that. But I am excited about the idea of making our transit more accessible and having that last mile, having more solutions for the last mile. So with that, I look forward to moving it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, appreciate the opportunity to speak on this. So I'd like to, of course, echo the sentiments of my colleagues. This is great work. This is going to really add to the portfolio of transportation options that residents of our community have. I'm particularly excited about the equity considerations area of the staff report. As everyone knows, we've made equity kind of an overriding consideration and value of the city, and it's great to see it in a staff report and to kind of look at it from a kind of very actions-oriented perspective. The only comment that I'll give about the equity considerations area, which I think is definitely well done, is I would love to have each of these bullets, these action items, grounded in some kind of finding, excuse me. So for example, the first bullet, provide payment options to users who don't have access to credit card or bank accounts to pay with cash or any other available method. If we could potentially put some kind of finding, maybe a 1 or 2 line finding to explain why we are making that suggestion, I think that would be really helpful for those folks in our community who may not have such a critical lens on equity considerations. So, an example of that could be we have found that there is a significant portion of residents in our community who are unbanked, and they happen to be folks who are of lower socioeconomic status, perhaps of younger age considerations, things like that, just so that we have a grounding and why a particular recommendation is being made. Other than that, again, I think it's really great. I'm super excited that this is going to be part of our portfolio of options in terms of last mile transportation. And yeah, that's all I have. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. I agree with all the comments that have been made. Do any other council members have a comment or a question? Seeing none, I was going to say I agree with what's been said. I was wondering if it says that I would agree with Councilmember G. We need a robust educational component. I'm hoping that we'll be able to use, for instance, our portable electronic signage. If there's any cost to us on doing that or getting additional signs, I think that should be passed on to the operators, because I do believe that we are going to have to do a lot of robust education on this topic. And so whatever is necessary, let's be sure we keep track of the costs involved and pass it on to the operators who will be making the profit on this. And if there's permanent signage needed in the future, as was demonstrated by an email I saw earlier today by another city, that I would say the operators should probably provide the cost for that signage if it's to be made permanent. And the last mile component that Vice Mayor Hale mentioned, I totally support that concept. And hopefully we'll have micro mobility services out by the port of Redwood City in the near future to allow people to get off that ferry and either go home or go to work from there. So I'm very excited about this also. Seeing no further questions, I'd like to know if someone would like to make a motion and a second to introduce this ordinance amending Chapter 8.
So moved.
Okay, motion was made by Vice Mayor Hale, I believe, and seconded by Council Member Smith. And Ms. Ramirez,
No,
did
I
you?
believe that was Councilmember Aguirre.
Oh, I'm sorry. Motion was made by Councilmember Aguirre and seconded by Councilmember Smith. Would that be correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and I see Ms. Ramirez has her hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I simply wanted to make sure that I understood what the motion is. You do have two actions before you. You have both the ordinance, the first reading of that ordinance, as well as adoption of a resolution. And so the council could take both actions in one motion. I just only heard about the ordinance and wanted to make sure I understood what the motion maker and the second were seeking from their council.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And both ordinances, thank you.
Second.
Thank you for keeping us on the straight and narrow. I see that. So we have item 2 and 3, which is first you have the ordinance and second we have a resolution. And the maker of the motion and the second agree that that's what the intention was. And if there's no further discussion on that, I'll turn it over to City Clerk for a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mayor. We'll start with Council Member Espinosa Garnica,
Yes.
Council Member G,
Yes.
Council Member Reddy,
Yes.
Council Member Smith,
Yes.
Council Member Aguirre,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hale,
Yes.
and Mayor Howard.
Yes,
The motion passes unanimously.
thank you. We have no staff reports, so we move on to item number 10, matters of council interest. Our first item, City Council member reports from regional meetings and conferences attended. We'll start with CCAG, South Bayside Waste Management Authority, Silicon Valley Clean Water Commission. Our council member, Alicia Aguirre, is a member, and she will be giving the update on these different groups. Council member Aguirre.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my pleasure to talk about 3 regional boards that I serve on that are doing great things in our county, in the region. Some of them, like CCAG, deal with all of the county. Others deal with 11 cities. Others deal with 3 cities. And so they're all very different. So I want to talk about and a lot of it has to do with infrastructure and as we're moving forward in transportation. So starting with CCAG, which is City County Association of Governments. Next slide, please. So this is 21 jurisdictions, which means we have the 20 cities and the county are involved in it. And so the issues are to look at measures that are cost effective and to address all of the statewide mandates that we have. And so we are what's called the Congestion Management Agency and also the County Transportation Agency. It's very interesting because we're one of the few, I don't even know, in the state that is like this. There aren't many. There are some transportation, there are some that are congestion management, but one of the few, it's kind of an anomaly to have 21 jurisdictions working together on issues that we talked about. Transportation, stormwater is a huge one, and Airport Land Use Commission. Next slide, please. So some of the goals that we have are to improve mobility in the environment, reduce congestion, GHG emissions, support linkage transportation, compact land use, manage regional stormwater permit and advance multi-benefit projects, and support energy efficiency efforts. Next slide, please. So these are the logos of our cities. There's 20 cities which encompass San Mateo County, and the county are also involved. Next slide, please. So the leadership that is regional as part of this group is creating, supporting, funding critical organizations and programs in San Mateo County. These are some of the ones that we are working with, and we've all talked about these in our different meetings. One Shoreline, commute.org, 21 Elements, and of course, the newest one that we've been working on. And if you've been on 101, you've seen this. It's exciting to see that we are moving forward with the San Mateo County Express Lanes, JPA. We're now looking at a logo. We're looking at what does that look like? Is it going to be called San Mateo County? Is it called Express Lanes? As we connect our region from Santa Clara all the way to San Francisco, this is a phase that we're moving in. And then of course, 380 to the north will be the next phase. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea of what all of this costs and how we are investing in infrastructure, we have $36.2 million is the annual average transportation investment countywide. We're looking at regional highways, pedestrians, SRTS is Safe Routes to School, which is huge in our community, local streets and roads, commute.org, shuttles, paratransit, life transit. We're talking about also water infrastructure, which is important as we look at our ferries. So think about how much money is being spent on infrastructure and how much these bills are so important to us, both from the federal and state level. Next slide, please. So 1.2 billion regionally is of some significant projects. We talked about the Express Lane Santa Clara line to 380, the cost that one has, the 92-101 area improvements, the direct connector, the managed lanes into the north of 380, what that's going to cost, and the smart corridor projects. If you look at the bottom number, you just get a big feeling of how much this has cost for us to be able to have some projects that are really going to make a difference in our county. Next slide, please. So what are some of the major planning? The countywide bike pedestrian planning, the updated countywide transportation demand management, and of course, working with MTC Plan Bay Area 2050, identifying $5.2 billion in countywide transportation projects, and then the countywide subscription for streetlight data. Next slide, please. Stormwater is a huge part of what we work on CCAG, as we were talking about today, the importance and the infrastructure. This is a regional municipal permit. There's plans for green infrastructure, sustainable street master plan, and the regional multi-benefit projects. And this is $3 million advancing the projects and design. And you look at where they are and where they're collecting the stormwater in different parts of our region. Next slide, please. Energy efficiency, climate resilience. We have the Energy Watch for San Mateo County, and this identifies project opportunities referring to PGE and contractors. We work with municipalities, special districts, school districts, small disadvantaged communities, and also the Regional Integrated Climate Action Planning Suite, and we use so many acronyms that I just wanted to make sure we spelled it all out when you see it. And then this provides a climate action plan for our county. It's a template with documents and tools, and of course, it provides our annual GHG emissions inventories for all the cities and the counties. Next slide, please. So one of the most important factors that CCAG has always been addressing is advancing equity. So as we were talking about the equity in the micromobility program, we've really taken this on. We've learned from other counties and other best practices, but we're also leading the state in working how we really advance the equity. So the Highway 101 mobility plans improves the equity corridor that's been completed. The Express Lanes JPA and Equity Study Program is in design and implementation. And then the countywide bike pedestrian plan equity focus has been completed. And then the equity assessment for CCAG is in its initial development. And this has been something that CCAG has really been focused and working on. And it's exciting. And you'll see this once the 101 Express Lanes opens, hopefully December, January, how we have really worked with all of our communities to make sure that equity is built into the program, that folks can get smart cards or the passes, those fast tracks and cards that are loaded for folks that need it in our community. Those are just some of the things that will be coming forward. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to focus on what Redwood City has benefited from CCAG. So these are some support for projects in Redwood City. And I don't need to read them and go through down, but if you look at the amount of money that has been invested in Redwood City for the Woodside Interchange, green infrastructure, Safe Routes to Schools project, Red Morton, Roosevelt Avenue, the Build Bike Pedestrian Project, the Vera Build Bike Pedestrian Project, the city's bike and pedestrian plan, and then supporting our action plan. Now, our city has been really good at going after these funds, and this is what has been awarded. And as you know, our city is the third largest in the county. And so we've been very aggressive in really going after this funding so that we can apply all of this infrastructure change into our city. Next slide, please. And that's it. So this is just, if you have any questions, these are the cities that are incorporated, the 20 cities and the county. So that is CCAG. And unless there's questions, I would move on to the next one because I have a couple more.
Are there any questions for Councilmember Aguirre? I don't see any questions, but I think it was an excellent, thank you, an excellent synopsis of the work that's been going on with CCAG. Really appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay, Rethink Waste. And so this is solid waste recycling and waste reduction advocacy. So as we move forward on this one, who is Rethink Waste? We call it South Bayside Waste Management Authority, again, another acronym. And as I mentioned earlier, this one has 11 public agencies and San Mateo County. This was formed in 1982, and it's been a leader in delivering innovative waste and reduction. The service area has 428,000 residents, 93,000 households, 11,000 businesses, and we are recycling almost 500,000 tons a year of material. And you can see the cities that are there, the cities that are part of this JPA, which is now formed with council members. It used to be just technical assistant folk staff, and now we have a really great collaboration between our folks from Public Works, which each of our cities working together with council members, creating policy and making changes to this. Next slide, please. So when we think of Rethink Waste, besides the 11 member agencies, there's a lot of pieces to it. There's the Shoreway Environmental Center. If you've never had a tour, I strongly recommend that you have a tour of what we do in the recycling center. They go out to all of our schools. They've been working in our schools in Redwood City, really focusing on education for our youth, because they're the ones that are going to go home and tell their parents how to recycle, because some of the parents forget where we put things in what bins. And then we have South Bay Recycling. And then, of course, Recology, and altogether there's 400 workers, and it's a $130 million a year operation. Next slide, please. This is what the Shoreway Environmental Center looks like. It's 16,000 acres in San Carlos. It's off of 101, if you haven't seen it. And there's public recycling center as well as a transfer station and the materials recovery facility, which we call the MRF. Next slide, please. So the member agency support services are solid waste industry expertise, compliance management, facility program, planning, legislative and regulatory expertise, contract management, cost management, financial audits. All of these pieces are part of what we support in this agency. Next slide, please. So some of the projects that I'm really excited that we're working on, of course, SB 1383, we've been talking a lot about that. We just had a webinar last week with our Commissioner Lara that was part of it, and talking about what we need to do as a state for recycling and how we need to have organics to energy pilots, battery safety. They were asking cities throughout the state at this webinar to make sure we had recycling bins. It was an investment, and that we had 3 different bins. And what we knew in San Mateo County, at least for these 11 agencies, we're already there. And we're moving forward with our organics to energy pilot, which I'm really excited to talk about a little bit more. It's a proof of a technical concept, converting organic food scraps into renewable energy source. And the pilot findings are that this 6-month pilot concludes in 3 weeks, and the quality of this organic material meets the technical requirement. And after many COVID-related operational challenges, the operation requirements to conduct this process is still moving forward in the future. So it's captured 25,000 tons of organic food scraps per year for use in a renewable energy source for our community, and it will eliminate thousands of vehicle miles traveled, eliminated significant levels of harmful GHG emissions from the trucking, and it'll be close to cost neutral to our current organics processing costs to these premium materials. And staff estimates that 3 to 6 new jobs will be created. And this was part of a grant assistance of $5.225 million project worth grant funding from the state and from Cal Recycle and the County of San Mateo. Okay, next slide, please. So, and this is the MOU that I was talking about, the outreach, recording, reporting waivers. San Mateo County Office of Sustainability is working with us, leading the efforts in edible recovery. And those, these are the steps as we move forward with the ordinances, the policies, the enforcement, the product procurement, collection, food recovery, and moving forward. And SB 1383, I think you'll be hearing a lot about it, as it is a state mandated implementation that we're working on. And I'm really proud to say that in San Mateo County, at least with these 11 agencies that I'm working with, is doing a great job in moving this forward and as a leader. Next slide, please. There's also legislation in zero waste now, and this was established by the legislative committee with 4 board members. There's a coalition covering nearly 100 local jurisdictions. They are all committed to zero waste future in California. And then one of the big issues is we continue to push for battery extended producer responsibility. And that has been a challenge at the state level, because we know just the damage that these have done to, especially to our center in San Carlos. Next slide, please. And the organics to energy pilot is the one that I just highlighted. And I wanted to say we're really excited as we move this pilot forward. Just as we're talking about recycled water, now we're looking at organics to energy pilot in this county. And it's very exciting as we move this forward. And I believe that is my last slide for SBWMA. And I will move to the last one unless there is. Are there questions?
Councilmember Aguirre, I just wanted to know, how would, is there a website if someone wanted to know how to participate more in the Organics to Energy program?
Yes, it would be on the South Bay Side Waste Management Authority, SBWMA website.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and the last one is Silicon Valley Clean Water. And this is the one we've been talking about earlier, where we have our recycled water plant, but of course we do a lot more things there. This JPA has 4 jurisdictions. Next slide, please. It was founded in 1969 by a Joint Powers Agreement. It's governed by a commission of 4 member agencies. And if you look at the agencies, it's the city of Belmont, the city of Redwood City, the city of San Carlos, and West Bay Sanitary District. And based on the size of the city, we have the 42 votes in the city of Redwood City. So we have the, let's say, the most influence as far as the size of the city, and also just as we work in our member agencies. So this voting is conducted by percentage of allocation of ownership. Next slide, please. So what does Silicon Valley Clean Water do? It's a wastewater conveyance, treatment, and disposal. It conveys water from the agencies to the treatment plant, and it treats the water, and the permit treatment capacity of 29 MGDs, it currently treating 13, and it recycles water for Redwood City. And if you can see, it's the West Bay Sanitary District, is they're all kind of close together, and that's why this JPA is in this area. And it just discharges treated water 1.3 miles into the San Francisco Bay. Next slide, please. So if you can see, we were talking about infrastructure. This treatment plant was built in 1980, 92% by Clean Water Act grants, and there's been minimal maintenance to any of these facilities, I think, in our state or in our country. So as we look at these facilities, you know, we think about what it's going to cost, and as we move forward. But the conveyance system of the 1960s was repurposed from an old outfield pipeline, and the gravity pipeline used as a pressure pipe. So think about now what we're doing as we're moving forward. We have a new pipe that's going to be moving forward. It's going through our areas that we're working for. It's an aged wastewater infrastructure and it's being replaced across the United States. And Silicon Valley is at the forefront of the facility replacement. In fact, we had I believe he's called the director of the EPA, came here a couple of months ago just because it was one of the cutting edge on moving forward with infrastructure and what the funding has been able to do. Next slide, please. So the capital improvement program was implemented in 2008, just as we've heard capital improvement programs and the other things that we've been talking about today in our city council meeting. It addresses the infrastructure needs. The capital improvement has been updated 6 times, most recently in January 2020. And these updates are incorporated in our annual long-range financial plan. And the public health protection and environmental stewardship is also generational, talking about generational equity. Next slide, please. So some of the key initiatives, it's been electrical sustainability, sea level rise protection. If you can look at the plant, 75% of the plant power, main electrical feed above SLR elevation, battery stored and produce the power. The plant has been going through many renovations and upgrades and infrastructure that is benefiting our city, but definitely the region as well. Next slide, please. This has been a public-private partnership for biosolids management. There were 5,000 tons of biosolids, which is a 90% reduction to 500 tons of biochar. So you could see from the picture what that looks like as we move forward with these initiatives of biosolids. Just as I was talking about earlier with SBWMA, how we're looking for organics and how we're changing that as well. Next slide, please. So some of the key initiatives is the rescue program. If you look at the size of that person and the tunnel, we have been boring from San Carlos all the way through the San Carlos airport. So you get an idea of this machine that was we inaugurated, and now it's en route back, I believe, to the next project somewhere in the world because it was brought in from Europe. So the tunnel boring machine arrived at the treatment plant. It was very exciting to see it, and the community got the opportunity to name it. So this is a major investment for our region as we look forward to this big bore that moved forward. Next slide, please. So one of the things, and we approved this at a council meeting recently, I'm just so proud of the way that Silicon Valley Clean Water has been working with their funding sources and the WIFIA programs and the loans. And that was one of the other reasons that the director of the EPA came to see what we were doing with this. And so if you look at the loans that we were able to get and the bonds and the revenue, it's really what's helped move these programs forward. Next slide, please. So the debt costs have improved considerably, which really helps the residents of Redwood City, the residents of the other members of the JPA. So the anticipated debt service payments versus long-run financial planning. This, like I said, I'm just very proud of the way we've been able to move forward with this infrastructure, but not giving it to the ratepayers. Next slide. So the sewer rates adjustments continue to fund these projects. Members' rates remain at mid-range amongst all of the agencies, and modest rates increases remain necessary to complete the funding. So you can see below the areas of the member agencies, and Redwood City is there, right in the lowest, one of the lowest areas of what we're actually paying for some of this. Next slide, please. And that is it. So as you can see, I love garbage, wastewater, infrastructure, and all of the above. To me, it's very challenging being a professor of languages. It just really worked with another part of my brain and just really enticed me to learn more and more and just to see and be really excited about what we're able to do in our region and to benefit our residents and our community between water and transportation, safe routes to schools, and everything that we're doing, and recycling and working with our children to be the future leaders and recyclers in our community. So with that, that's what I'm working on. That's what we are working on these 3 agencies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Aguirre. And thank you for being such a great representative for us on these different groups. I wanted to let you know that I really appreciated the synopsis on each and every one. And also, you're using a part of your brain, you're stretching your brain, because this is amazing and complicated. And you're an expert at acronyms. And thank you so much for explaining each and every acronym or having it on the slide, because it's so unfair to assume that people understand what we're talking about when you use an acronym. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Moving on to Councilmember Reddy will be giving us an update of the CCAG Congestion Management and Environmental Quality and LAFCO. Councilmember Reddy.
Thank you, Mayor Howard. I really enjoyed that presentation by my colleague, and I didn't come equipped. I was impressed with the slides, and next time I will use their model and come with better slide equipped. But
excuse me, Councilmember Reddy, could you speak closer into the microphone? I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Okay, is that better?
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, excellent. So I'm talking about two agencies that I'm a member of. One is the Congestion Management Environmental Quality Committee, and that is a committee that provides advice and recommendations to the City County Association of Governments, CCAG, which is what Councilmember Aguirre was just talking about. And it's similar to our boards and commissions that give advice and recommendations to the City Council. So that's what the CMEC committee does, is provide recommendations and advice to CCAG. And it's providing advice on all matters relating to traffic congestion management, travel demand management, coordination of land use and transportation planning, mobile source air quality programs, energy resources and conservation, and other environmental issues facing the local jurisdictions in San Mateo County. The CMEC committee is composed of 9 elected seats, plus 1 seat from each Samtrans, Caltrain, Metropolitan Transportation Commission, or MTC, and 1 general public member. CMEC met most recently on September 27th. Among the items on the agenda for that meeting was a solicitation of comments for the scope of services under the CCAG equity assessment, which Councilmember Aguirre mentioned as well. In addition, we reviewed and took action to recommend the awarding of grants totaling $421,000 in clean air funds for bicycle and pedestrian projects in Millbrae and San Bruno, and a reallocation of $797,000 in 1 Bay Area Grant 2 program funds for a school safety project in Daly City and a traffic calming project in Millbrae. Although I'm able to report that Redwood City staff does a great job of being on top of grant opportunities when they present themselves, I can also report that it's very good to have Redwood City members on these various regional committees to ensure that the needs of our community are represented. So that's CMEC. The other committee I'm reporting on tonight is LAFCO. That's the San Mateo County Local Agency Formation Commission. So LAFCO is a state-mandated independent agency with county-wide jurisdiction over changes in organization and boundaries of cities and special districts, including annexations, detachments, incorporations, and formations. LAFCOs were created by the state legislature in 1963 in response to the rapid growth and sporadic formation of cities and special districts in California in the years following World War II. LAFCO has responsibility in the following areas affecting local government in the county: to discourage urban sprawl and encourage the orderly growth and development of local government agencies, to prevent premature conversion of agricultural and open space lands, to review and approve or disapprove proposals for changes in the boundaries and organization of the 20 cities, 24 independent special districts, and approximately 44 county governed special districts, plus incorporations of cities and formations of special districts. To establish and periodically update spheres of influence, future boundary, organization, and service plans for the counties, cities, and special districts. To perform and assist in studies of local government agencies with the goal of improving efficiency and reducing costs of providing urban services. LAFCO met most recently on September 15th. At that meeting, we reviewed the proposed outside service agreement to obtain sewer service for a single-family home and the proposed annexation of various rural properties to the West Bay Sanitation District. Those are examples of issues that come before this commission, nothing affecting Redwood City this time, but I do have a map if staff would help share that slide. I do have a map that demonstrates how important it is to have an agency like LAFCO reviewing proposed agreements. This is a map of Redwood City, but you'll see the light colored areas are actually, so this is Redwood City's sphere of influence when it comes to water and other pipes that Redwood City has a sphere of influence over. And they include Emerald Hills and North Fair Oaks, which are in and other unincorporated areas. So I thought it was important. We were having that utilities conversation earlier, and it's important to see how complicated this sometimes is, that though we might be living in an unincorporated area, we wonder sometimes why we're paying our water bill to Redwood City. And so this is the map to explain that. So Redwood City has not been represented on the LAFCO Commission recently, and I'm just really glad that I'm there, and I'm glad that Redwood City is now represented. Thank you, Mayor Howard.
Thank you, Council Member Reddy, for giving us that very insightful information. And I've often said, I'm glad there are 7 of us, because there are so many agencies that touch or impact Redwood City. And I'm glad there are 7 of us so we can spread the responsibility and the wealth around so we can serve our community well. Thank you so much to Councilmember Aguirre and Councilmember Reddy for your presentations tonight. Moving on now to City Council committee reports. We'll start with the Governance Subcommittee, which is Vice Mayor Hale, Councilmember Reddy, and myself. And Vice Mayor Hale will give the following update. Vice Mayor Hale.
So sorry, Mayor. I was just having a hard time pulling up my notes. Would you be willing to come back to me?
Oh, certainly, no problem. Our next is Transportation Mobility Subcommittee with Council Members Aguirre, Espinoza Garnica, and G. And Council Member Espinoza Garnica will be giving the update.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So on October 7th, we had a meeting of the Transportation Mobility Subcommittee. The primary focus of the meeting was on the grade separation and feasibility study and planned outreach around the southern grade crossings, Maple, Maine, and Chestnut. The committee received an update on the 101-84 interchange, including that staff submitted a grant application for $50 million to the San Mateo County Transportation Authority's highway program for construction funding. And that is all we have to report.
Thank you, Councilmember Espinoza Garnica. Vice Mayor Hale, would you like to give the Governance Subcommittee report? Okay, I'll next is the Harbor View Ad Hoc Committee, and that would be Vice Mayor Hale and Councilmember Smith and myself. And I'd be happy to give the update. The Harbor View Ad Hoc Committee, composed of Vice Mayor Hale, Councilmember Smith, and myself, met on Thursday, September 30th, to receive a presentation from the applicant team on the development and proposed community benefits. The development proposal is available on the city's website, and our committee is scheduled to meet again in late October.
Mayor, I'm prepared to give the update on this committee as well on the governance committee. So the governance committee consists of myself, Mayor Howard, and Councilmember Reddy. We met on October 4th to discuss a variety of topics, including potential charter amendments that need to be placed on the gubernatorial statewide election ballot for approval by the community, a proposed revision to the mayor and vice mayor rotation, which would be coming to council. We recommended a letter of support for the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act. And then we also discussed support for the state's Project Home Key funding, which would of course help with the new navigation center that was moved forward as a result of our land swap. And then we set a future date to discuss additional topics.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Hale. Moving on to item number 10, our city manager report. Ms. Diaz.
Good evening, and thank you, Mayor. I just want to make sure this sound okay for this evening.
I can hear you very well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. So I have 3 updates tonight. First, I wanted to give just a brief update on where we're at with preparing the housing element. And as the council knows, the housing element identifies areas within the city where new housing may be built, and it estimates how much housing could be built in each area. And we know that we may be needing to consider some changes in zoning in order to meet housing construction goals of approximately 4,600 new housing units. The city is under a time frame where the housing element needs to be adopted, and that's January 2023. We've been undergoing a series of community engagement activities. A recent one was on September 30th, where the city held a bilingual workshop to receive community input. We'll be summarizing that workshop, and that written summary will be available on the city's website. It's also going to be shared in a joint study session with the Housing and Human Concerns Committee and Planning Commission on Tuesday, October 19th at 6 p.m. Information, including the recording of the workshop, is available at the project website, and that's at welcomehomerwc.org. Second, I wanted to share that today we had another milestone in our pandemic recovery, and that is that we have increased our in-person services at City Hall to 3 days a week, in addition to continuing virtual services. The schedule will be from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, with specific hours possibly being a little different at specific counters. So we encourage folks to either give us a call or check the city website if you need assistance from a specific department. Also, the library is now open for full service hours 7 days a week at the downtown library, and 6 days a week at the Redwood Shores Branch Library, and 5 days a week at the Shaberg Branch Library. So returning to our service hours before COVID-19. And then last, just a quick highlight that on October 21st, you'll be hearing a lot about International Shakeout Day. And that's a time when local governments and others prepare for earthquakes. And so we'll encourage everyone listening to take a minute at 10:21 a.m. to drop, cover, and hold, and to review your family's emergency preparation plans. So you'll be seeing more about this from us and from others coming up. So you can get the jump now by making sure you're earthquake ready by October 21st. Thank you.
You said October 21st is the day?
That's it. International Shakeout Day.
Shakeout, okay. We'll be ready. We'll be ready. Thank you very much. This was a great meeting this evening. I just wanted to let you know, don't forget that the Zope Family Circus is in town. It's a downtown at the main library. Please don't miss this opportunity to enjoy a true family circus that comes every year to Redwood City, and they'll be here in October and into November. And in the meantime, I hope everyone out there, please stay healthy and safe. Take care, and we'll see you at our next meeting of October 25th, 2021. Good night.